Hello and welcome to MEELive. I'm Mohammed Hashim and it's the 14th of July. Boy, I'm excited for today's episode. Okay, so there's a lot of tension building ahead of Wednesday night's World Cup semifinal. That's England versus Argentina. This match is already bringing old football drama back into the spotlight. Maradona's hand of God in 1986, Beckham's red card in 1998, and 40-plus years of history that has never stayed on the pitch. But this year, Argentina isn't just facing opponents on the pitch, they're facing a growing backlash off it. Racism allegations, angry neighbors across Latin America, claims linking Lionel Messi to Israel, and a Milei government cozying up to Netanyahu. Have the reigning champions ever been this unloved? So, today we're doing some special World Cup coverage, and that's why I'm joined by two ME journalists here in the studio who happen to be major football fans. That's Oscar Rickett and Rayhan Uddin, to sort the fact from the fiction and figure out why this tournament has become about so much more than football for Argentina. All right, welcome, lads. I'm glad we're bringing this water cooler chat into the studio, making it official, putting it on the map.
It's coming home, mate.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what's going to happen. Like I said in the intro, there's a lot that's happening in terms of this World Cup, in terms of Argentina, but we're going to kind of try to zoom in on it. There's a lot we're going to unpack in this conversation, but I do want to start about Lionel Messi. That's kind of where I want to kick off, because there's a lot online. There's a lot of, I don't know, there's facts and there's fiction, and we're going to kind of try to unpack it together. Rayhan, I'm going to start with you. You know, the claims about Messi, the claims that linking him to Israel, to Zionism, you know, the fact and the misinformation, where do we even begin?
Yeah, so there has been a lot. It's been a running thing for years, linking Messi with Israel. In fact, I was in Egypt earlier this year. I was in an Uber going from Cairo to Alexandria, and I was trying to practice my Arabic, which I've been learning for a little while with the driver. And we got on to speaking about football, and he started telling me how Ronaldo and Messi are the two kind of best players of this era. He was talking to me about how Ronaldo is really pro-Palestine and donates all his money to Palestine, and Messi is pro-Israel, and there's lots of things linking him to Israel, and he kind of set up this narrative, which I've heard before, maybe you guys have heard before. You know,
and it's by the way, it's been coming back up on social media, especially after the Argentina-Egypt game.
Exactly.
A lot of this has come up.
Yeah, it reared its head after that game, partly because of the Egyptian manager's avowed pro-Palestinian views before the games. After the games, in his interview, talking about how there's bigger things in life than football, talking about the death of Palestinian children in Gaza at the hands of Israeli forces. And then there were some Argentina fans who waved Israeli flags. So this whole issue around Argentina's football team in Israel has reappeared, and Messi seems to be kind of at the center of this, and a lot of information flies around about Messi and his supposed links with Israel. So if we're going to talk about some of them, like one of the ones that has circulated quite a lot is this idea that Messi grew up in Israel, which is completely untrue.
But there is a but there.
There's a link. I mean, the link is that the city he grew up in, Rosario, the street name is Estado de Israel, State of Israel Street. That's the only link. But he obviously didn't grow up in Israel. The other thing that circulates a lot is this picture of Messi donning a kippah and being at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. Now, that is a real image. And it's from August 2013. There's also pictures from that.
We have it right here.
Yeah, exactly. We have the picture there, and on the same trip, there's also pictures of Messi with Shimon Peres and with Netanyahu as well. All genuine images from August 2013 when Barcelona organized a tour, a peace tour they called it, of Israel and of Palestine. So, these meetings did take place in the same trip. The Barcelona players also visited Palestinian sites. They visited the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. They went to Hebron, where they did a training session with Palestinian children. And they also met Mahmoud Abbas, Palestinian president. Now, for some people, the fact that the Israeli government used that trip to promote Messi being in Israel and PK and Iniesta and Neymar on official Israeli channels is a step too far, and they think that Messi and others shouldn't have been involved in that. Other people say, well, they met Palestinians as well. It was kind of out of Messi's control. It was organised by Barcelona.
Was it not part of, because it was at that point there was that period where Barcelona, they were too good to have a sponsor, so they had UNICEF.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was exact same.
I feel like it was a UNICEF thing. I also wonder if in this case whether any of the players had any choice. Yeah. I'm not for a minute suggesting that Messi would have been one of those guys to say no.
Yeah.
But it does feel like they don't really have a choice about where they go. Yeah,
on that UNICEF point, so Messi hasn't really said anything much about Israel, Palestine, just in general. He comes across as quite a reserved guy, doesn't really wade in on too many issues. Now, there is this one quote from August 2014 during the Israeli 50-day war on Gaza. This is what Messi had to say. He said, "As a father and a UNICEF Goodwill ambassador, I'm terribly saddened by the images coming from the conflict between Israel and Palestine, where violence has already claimed so many young lives and injured countless children. Children did not create this conflict, but they're paying the ultimate price. This cycle of senseless violence must stop. We must reflect on the consequences of military conflict, and children must be protected." That's one of the only quotes out there attributed to Lionel Messi about Israel and Palestine.
But here's something, Ray. I think that, and this is what's maybe fueling a lot of the, I guess we can call it the anger online, especially from the pro-Palestinian voices, is the fact that Messi has deals with Israeli companies. I think that, obviously there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of stuff that's been debunked, like him raising the Israeli flag, and it's been, there's been reports that these photos were doctored. Basically, we're having them up on the screen right here. But I think what is true is the fact that Messi has deals with, he's an ambassador for at least one Israeli company, I think. And that's something I want you to kind of zone in on.
While we say the kind of peace tour with Barcelona may have been out of his control, the things that are in his control are the brand deals that he makes. And so a couple of those deals, one of them was with Orcam, which is an Israeli company which helps visually impaired people identify their surroundings. Now, that is an Israeli company that's based in Jerusalem, which Messi was a brand ambassador for several years, did advertising with them. Another company, Sirin Labs, is a mobile phone company which uses blockchain technology for security. He was also a brand ambassador for that company, which is based in Tel Aviv, another Israeli company. Now, for a lot of pro-Palestinian voices, that is seen as a red line to go ahead and make brand partnerships with Israeli companies, given what Israel has been involved in Palestine. They see that as something that, a red line that shouldn't be crossed, and those are things that Messi has done, which people have criticized him for.
Okay. Well, I think the next thing to talk about is basically opening it up and talking about Argentina's relationship with Israel in terms of both governments. Before we do that, we do have two video clips. You know what, Oscar? You're going to be the one talking about this, so we're going to take a hydration break. We're going to play a couple videos that we have of Israeli officials talking about Argentina and favoring Argentina in the World Cup. I think the first clip that we have is of Israel's foreign minister talking to Milei, and Netanyahu as well was present. But play that first clip.
This is July. Please bring the fourth cup to Argentina in the Mundial.
So that was the first clip. The second clip that we have is of Netanyahu himself, actually. This was quite recent. He was on a podcast, and he also spoke about his support for Argentina. So let's hear that.
אני מחפש את ארגנטינה.
כן.
אתה יודע למה?
מסי, אני יכול לנחש?
לא, לפני זה דווקא יש להם נשיא שהוא,
וואו.
אגב, חבדניק.
וואו, הוא כוכב.
הוא כוכב עליון, באמת כוכב עליון, הוא עשה שם דברים מדהימים בכלכלה שלהם, על ידי אימוץ עקרונות כלכלה חופשית, אנחנו אוהבים לדבר על זה, אבל מילי הוא ידיד ענק של ישראל, והוא הביא נבחרת לא רע.
Okay, Oscar, let me start with you on this one. What do we know about the close relationship between both governments, between the Argentina government and the Israeli government? This sort of far-right alignment between the two.
Yeah, so this is part of this relationship is sort of emblematic of a right-wing to far right-wing sort of ecosystem network alliance that you see around the world, right? So, in Europe, the flag bearer for that used to be Viktor Orban. In Hungary, and Milei in Argentina is a crucial part of this. He's a self-described anarcho-capitalist. He loves Margaret Thatcher, which will be interesting to reflect upon when we talk about the Falklands a bit later, because like any Argentine president, he has to talk about how the Malvinas Islands are Argentina's, but he really loves Thatcher. So it's this kind of, it's the sort of ethno-nationalist, right-wing, libertarian, anarcho-capitalist sort of network that we're seeing in the kind of Trump-aligned world, yeah. But of course it precedes Trump by many decades. In Latin America, Argentina prior to Milei, under the kind of Peronist governments of Cristina Kirchner and others, it was not. It was a supporter of the Palestinians. It was not pro-Israel. Argentina is, and so in a way you can say that, we've seen recently in Chile and in Colombia two other Latin American governments that were previously left-wing, but which at recent elections turned sharply to the right with the, possibly illicit help of the US. The US, which is kind of practicing a kind of renewed Monroe doctrine for the 21st century, whereby it sees Latin America as its own backyard in which it is perfectly happy to meddle and control. So you now have Marco Rubio as basically the viceroy of Venezuela. You have the recent left-wing Colombian government being voted out. Same thing in Chile. You have Cuba under a kind of ever-tightening siege restriction, all of this. There's a kind of meme about Latin American elections, which is that it's always a competition between, like a kind of indigenous rights leftist who's like worked with children all her life, and then like a guy called Alfonso Hitler who wants to like sterilize the indigenous population and is like supported by America. And crudely speaking, it's kind of true. And with Milei, this guy is, he's on the radical libertarian right, and Israel is part of that. And, he was awarded something that's described as the Jewish Nobel Peace Prize, and it's really the sort of Israeli Nobel Peace Prize. And he's moved their embassy to Jerusalem, which, again, is incredibly unusual. There's only about 10 countries in the world that had their embassies in Jerusalem. There's direct flights between Tel Aviv and Buenos Aires. All of this stuff. Yes, there's a big Jewish population in Argentina, big Jewish population in Buenos Aires where I used to live. But it's by no means uniformly Zionist. I would have to say that.
But okay, what you're basically briefly explaining here is the political relationship about the two countries. But what about, it still doesn't answer this whole question about why Argentina is so unpopular during this World Cup. Like you have people that wouldn't have dreamed of back in England that actually want England to defeat them in the semifinal. Yeah. So I guess that question I can open it up to both of you in the sense of like why is Argentina so popular this time around?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two elements to it. There's a kind of football angle to it, and then there's also a sort of historical, political angle to it. So if we just talk about the football angle, Argentina won the last World Cup in 2022 in Qatar. They became the first South American team to win it in 20 years, after what was seen as a period of European dominance. People in football like an underdog, and They went into that final facing France, who had won the World Cup before that. And people didn't really want to see France win back-to-back. Messi, at the time, it was viewed as potentially Messi's last World Cup. They didn't think he would be playing again at the age of...
His last dance. Exactly.
And so, as someone who's been considered as potentially the greatest player of all time, everyone kind of wanted to see him lift that World Cup, It's the trophy that evaded him all his career. He got to a final in 2014. They didn't win it. So people really got behind Argentina in that tournament. Now that they've won it, and they're the most recent winners, they don't really have that underdog status anymore. So from a kind of footballing point of view, they've sort of lost that the factor of all these the South American flair that people love to watch hasn't really been successful against kind of European pragmatism for the last 20 years. That's now been shaken, and now they're a titan. They're one of the top 4 teams in the world. So there's that element of it. Within this tournament specifically as well, there has been this perception of decisions going in favor of Argentina. There was
by FIFA.
Yeah, there was
and particularly with Messi as well. People feeling like Messi is...
Yeah, there was this tackle that Messi did, I think, in one of the group stage games.
He just falls over and picks the ball up, and it's like going to be a free kick.
Yeah, there was one where people thought Messi should have got a red card for a tackle.
Yeah.
It wasn't even looked at.
And then there was the Egypt game and the Switzerland game after that.
In the Egypt game...
and it's important to say with it, but Egypt, and obviously, we're biased because it's our region, but, Egypt...
I didn't even talk yet. I didn't even say anything yet. I just said Egypt.
Egypt is like a plucky underdog, in the, despite being a country of 100 million people. And
for anyone who didn't watch
lovable.
The game, there was a sensational goal that Egypt scored. So that was ruled out for a foul that seemed to occur quite a long time before the ball went in the net. And then in the last moments of the game, Argentina score a winner in which there was potentially 2 fouls in the run-up to that goal, neither of which were chalked off.
Yeah, and they weren't checked by the VAR.
The great injustice in that game is that the second goal that Egypt scored, because for VAR to go back that far, for VAR to go back that far, and it really, I think it again, because obviously VAR is a kind of constant ongoing source of horror in any football fan's life anyway, and so for it to be translated into that, it's like a meeting of all these kind of things: VAR, FIFA, corruption, everything. Whether it was actually like technically legally unfair or not, it just reeks of injustice. Also because it was such a good goal. And then
don't remind me.
Zico then goes and scores quite a similar goal not long afterwards.
Zico.
But it just feels, and I think something that people who watched the game live were saying was that there was just this feeling of Argentina getting every decision.
It almost feels inevitable that because in the last 3 games that they've played against Cape Verde, Egypt and Switzerland, teams that Argentina on paper are much stronger than, they really struggled. Right, and then in the Switzerland game, there was also
a red card,
a contentious decision where a yellow card was overturned and given to the other player on the basis of mistaken identity, which felt very tenuous, because mistaken identity should really refer to when you've booked the wrong guy because you thought he was someone else, and that was then used to switch it to the other team, which feels like re-refereeing the match. And so people took a lot of issue with that, and Switzerland were really livid, and the manager afterwards, they felt like there was an injustice there as well.
But it's not just the team, Rayhan, as well, because the fans have also been singled out, because there's been accusations and allegations of racism, specifically by Argentina.
Yeah, so
Argentina supporters.
In this tournament, there's been a few racist incidents. One towards the streamer I Show Speed. There were 2 incidents in 2 separate matches in Argentina games that he went to, where FIFA have actually launched an investigation into racist abuse that was directed towards him by Argentina fans. And there's been a wider discussion about Argentina's players as well, and them being involved. After they won the Copa America in 2024, there was footage of them participating in a chant which went out on Instagram Live. I think I've got the lyrics. They said, they play for France, but they are from Angola. His mother is Nigerian, his father is Cameroonian, but on the passport, French. A racist chant, that, talking about the French players as if they're not French. That then went out on Instagram Live, massive backlash. One of the players who faced the biggest backlash for that was Enzo Fernandez, who plays for Chelsea, a team with a lot of French players, many of whom are black, and Wesley Fofana, one of them, he went straight out on social media and was very critical of it, and Chelsea kind of had to deal with this situation internally.
What Rayhan's not telling you is that he's a Chelsea fan, and Chelsea has a long history of having, far-right nationalist fans. And so, we could argue that Enzo Fernandez has learnt this behaviour at Chelsea, a toxic football club with a terrible history of racism. And maybe we're throwing Argentina under the bus unfairly here.
No, but no, even to add to what Ray is saying, the allegations of racism even have extended beyond Speed. There was these reports of basically Egypt fans saying that Argentina fans threw beer at them after the game or during the game even. There was several fans holding the Israeli flag towards Egypt coach Hussam Hassan because he had held the Palestine flag in his last game with Egypt. So again, I guess the question here is there a comfort display of racism on behalf of these fans?
I think what we've clearly seen from these incidents, I think what I remember feeling like I saw sometimes in Argentina, and you lived there, was a sort of like every country has racism, every country has its problems with racism. Sometimes in Argentina, and I don't mean to diminish this racism at all, sometimes I felt like there's like this kind of weird silliness to it. Like it's still like to do the to do the kind of to do these like, but there's something kind of like childish about it, which in a way makes it worse actually. And I think you sort of see that a bit with some of the fans, I don't know if they're getting like I don't know if they're being like singled out more. This becomes a narrative. Argentina. What I would also say about Argentina in this context and in the context of sort of like online support is that Argentina has always been a sort of black sheep in Latin America. That
is it because of the demographics?
Well, people. I think it's a few things. People, other countries in Latin America, there's a perception of Argentines as being sort of feeling like they're European, that they look down on the rest of Latin America, that they're this place apart. When I was there, and it was a long time ago, the people that I knew, and again, we're talking about sort of alternative people, maybe artists, journalists, whatever, but there was a real feeling then of wanting Argentina to be part of Latin America, wanting it not to be this kind of culture where, and again, you see this with the elites in Argentina, particularly the right-wing elites. They go to Miami, they go to Europe, I
think to add the context to what you were saying, and a lot of this has come up online, talking about the demographics, as you mentioned, Argentina does have a slightly smaller indigenous population compared to the likes of Bolivia and Mexico and some of these countries, and part of that is to do with Argentina's history and kind of massacres and genocides that took place a very, very long time ago. Similarly, the kind of black population, a much lower percentage if you compare that to Colombia or Brazil or some of these countries. Lots of different factors: conscription in war, disease, demographic changes because of lots of kind of European migration to Argentina over the centuries.
We can't forget Maradona as well and his pro-Palestine stance.
Yeah, exactly. So there's both those things. You know, you've got that that perception of them seeming to be more European than other South American countries, but then at the same time, it's the country of Diego Maradona, someone who identifies himself as a socialist and anti-imperialist, and has railed against George Bush, and has said he feels Palestinian. And it's also the country of Che Guevara, one of the most famous anti-imperialists of the last century.
Those are probably the two most famous Argentines.
Yeah.
And this is the thing again. You're going, and maybe we may as well talk about here the difference between Maradona and Messi.
Yeah.
And it took a long time for Argentine fans to love Messi in the way that they love Maradona, or maybe the way that they loved Maradona. Maradona was from Avillas, so he was from a slum in Buenos Aires. There's this extraordinary story from his childhood about him falling into an open sewer. And his uncle, who tries to come rescue him, shouts, "Keep your head above the shit." He put like half the cocaine of Latin America up his nose, but then he washed it down with pizza and beer. But he was still this extraordinary, he was like a kind of, with the curly hair, he had a genius for playing football, but he had a genius for solidarity as well. Fidel Castro, he referred to Castro as like a father to him. He stayed and he lived in Cuba for a long time. He accepted honors from Cuba and not from the United States. Castro kept him alive, in fact. The Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish said Maradona had missiles in his veins. He didn't have blood. And in that article, which he wrote in 1996, Darwish talks about how football is the arena of expression in the dungeon of Arab democracy. It's a breathing space that allows the crumbling nation to heal around a common purpose. It's a place, essentially, where people are free. Whatever's happening with your government, and remember that Maradona, during the Falklands and during the 1978 World Cup in Argentina, Argentina was ruled by a right-wing, US-backed right-wing military junta that used to kidnap people and throw them out of aeroplanes. So when he understood too this idea that you might live in a particular kind of society, but on a football pitch you're free, you can express yourself. And Messi, he went to Europe when he was very young. He didn't play in the same way that Maradona played. I mean, they're very similar in the sense they're left-footed, they're great dribblers. But he was not perceived to be Argentine in the same way for a long time, actually.
All right. Well, I mean, we're running out of time. Let's talk about Wednesday's match, because you mentioned Maradona. Obviously a lot of England supporters look back at the 1986 final bitterly because of the hand of God. Although he also, that same final had, arguably the best goal of the century. But there is a lot of history on the pitch, off the pitch, as I mentioned earlier in the interview. And so we're going to see England versus Argentina on Wednesday. I guess what weight does a match like this carry? There's so much to it.
It's funny because when every World Cup when a World Cup comes around, it's like the Argentine fans come up with a new song, and it's like it has to have three elements. One is Maradona, one is how they're going to win their third, fourth, whatever World Cup it is, and one is the Falklands, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. In every town in Argentina, people know where the Falklands are. They can point to them on the map. In England, it's only really an issue when we're thinking about Argentina, when something like this comes up. Our songs tend to be about the Second World War. you know, or like if when they're kind of nationalistic, jingoistic songs, as they are sometimes, it's, you know, 10 German bombers or whatever it is. But the Malvinas, like this is a central issue, and like I said earlier, like, you know, they're again, maybe there are two things that unite Argentine politicians across the political spectrum. One is football, and the other is the Falklands. And Milei, he loves Thatcher, but he has to. He's you know, he's like, but you know, the Malvinas are ours, and that's always.
And there was a back and forth, right, between the Argentinian foreign minister and Keir Starmer just
this week.
Yeah, this week, right, exactly, because it always comes back up again.
Yeah, about Falkland specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, because it will always, you know, in.
Yeah, you mentioned Maradona. You know, that match in which Maradona scores the hand of God in 1986, and then scores that amazing goal. It was just a few years after the Falklands War, and this is the quote he said. He said, reflecting on that match, he said, "Of course, before the match, we said that football had nothing to do with the Malvinas War, but we knew a lot of Argentinian kids had died there, shot down like little birds. This was revenge." So he's made the claim himself, and like you say. There's a lot of chants. The chant that they were singing in the dressing room after the Switzerland game this week was for the Malvinas, for Diego, for Leo's last one, his last tournament. Yeah. You know, which has those elements that you said.
It's got the elements.
And then also just before that, when they were still on the pitch, the fans said, "If you don't jump, you're English," and the players got involved in that chant and, you know, kind of jumped around. So the English are a big part of these chants and how the fans interact with the players. But it's become a massive deal because we now very rarely see England play against Argentina.
It's true.
And one of the reasons for that is the Falklands War. We mostly only see them play each other now at World Cups because it's just difficult to organise a friendly and ensure security and safety. And actually, the one time they had a friendly was in 2005. It was in Geneva, and that's the last time they played each other, 21 years ago, and it's the first game for 21 years. And it even affects referees. So just to give you a quick example before we conclude.
Quickly, Ray, quickly, got to wrap up.
I just wanted to just say that there's two English referees that are at the tournament this year, Michael Oliver and Simon Hooper. They can't referee the final of the World Cup because either England or Argentina will be in the final. They obviously can't referee if England get to the final because that's their country, but they also can't referee if Argentina get to the final because of the Falklands War. Political sensitivities rule out certain referees from being able to, and the same, there's an Argentinian ref, Facundo Tello. He also can't referee the final of the World Cup because either England or Argentina are going to be in it. So it runs deep.
It runs deep, as you say, but let me put you both on the spot. Verdict for the game. Come on.
I think England are going to win.
Okay. Ray?
I think it's going to go to a penalty shootout.
Ah, man. Come on. Come on, Ray.
I think Emi Martinez is going to do a job on us. Yeah, I think we lose it on penalties.
I feel weird now, but I've committed to it. What about Spain, France?
Spain.
No, France. France is winning the World Cup. Are you kidding me? France is taking it to French home. And there we have it, folks. I just want to thank these two legends over here for this conversation. This was really good. I also want to thank the legends in the gallery. That's Anas, Lucy, and Georgia. And that's all that we have time for today. To all of you watching, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you follow us on social media at Middle East Eye, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.